Welcome to the But Did You Die podcast. Darren Boot Clark coming to you from the mean streets of El Lago, and we are going all the way up to New York City. And this week we've got a doozy, folks. This is a very emotional podcast. It's dealing with suicide and addiction. And my guest I'm honored to speak to today, I was referred to him by the first podcast, Jose's podcast, and him and Jose know each other. So Joe Pizzimenti, who is a true Italian from New York City, is going to be talking to us today about his story and his pathway onto success. And it is one: strap in, get some popcorn, get a sandwich, and sit down, strap in, and I think you're really going to enjoy this and be inspired. So without further ado, Joe, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Darren. Thanks, man, for having me. It's a true honor and pleasure to be here with you today. So thank you. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. I know. And I, this will be going out a couple weeks from now, but we're doing this on Super Bowl Sunday. So I know it means a lot to you to be able to, to do it during this day. But thanks again. We're going to start out a little light, kind of get the ball rolling. It's called the medulla oblongata minute, and kind of stretch our brain muscles before we get into the heavy stuff. So, Joe, what was your first car?
My first car was an '88 Chevy Beretta.
Oh, nice.
'88 Beretta. Yeah, I love that car. It was a doozy. I worked at the pizzeria, and I bought that car. I think it was $2,500. Bought that car for, and had it for a couple of years, and yeah, it was a doozy.
Cool. Pizzeria. So tell me, being Italian and in New York City, what's your favorite pizza or pie, I guess you call it?
Pepperoni for me. I'm a big pepperoni guy, but any kind of Staten Island or Brooklyn pizza I could get my hands on is pretty good. Anytime you go outside of there, you're taking a chance. But I actually have had some good pizza in Florida, believe it or not. But
okay,
because my father lives down there. But yeah, New York pizza, you can't get much better than that.
There you go. Yeah, I've been to New York once, and I went down to Little Italy, and they were having a parade, and just that's a cool little environment. But so, and then
absolutely.
What's your most embarrassing moment in the last 5 years?
Last 5 years, I would say my first Facebook Live. I was stuttering. I was just miserable. I've actually tried to reclaim it, but I can't find it. Just a bunch of ums, a bunch of stutters, just miserable. One of my friends said, "You got to do this Facebook Live" a couple of years ago, and when it came out. And now I'm still learning, but yeah, I would say that was very embarrassing because I had people comment on it like, "What the hell are you doing?" Sound like a moron.
You know what? Yeah, we learn as we go, and we get better with every time, right? So
absolutely, yeah. Hey, man, you got to practice at it. You got to put yourself out there. And embarrassing, yeah, nothing's embarrassing. It's a learning experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, and if you can't laugh at yourself, then you're not living, right?
Absolutely. Good point.
Okay, well, Joe, let's just dive into it. Without further ado, if you could please tell us your "But Did You Die" story or stories.
Sure. So, as you said, it's pretty emotional. I've been able to tell it recently, and let me start with my parents got divorced at 6. Hit me really hard, and for a couple years there, I was doing everything and anything to get attention, right? Because when we're struggling and we're depressed, that's what we do. We want attention. Brought to ourselves. I had an older brother in the house. My mom was raising us. My father moved. We were in Long Island at the time, and my father moved back to Staten Island. And it came to the point where I wanted to live with my father, right? Young boy, right? Being raised by his mother. I had a ton of friends. I enjoyed my community over there, but I wanted to live with my father, right? So I remember calling him up and asking him, "Dad, can I come live with you?" And my father, he was, newly single, basically, living with his mom, working and, going out. He said no. He flat out said no.
Wow.
And that really set me on a downward spiral where I got to the point where I developed school phobia. I didn't want to go to school. I would fake sick all the time. Lucky for me, I had a babysitter down the block, a couple houses down that was like family, like a mother. So when my mom had to work, but I was sick, I stayed home. I didn't have to stay home by myself at that young age. I stayed at her house. So I did that so many times. And it got to the point where I was just sick and tired of being so miserable. So I got to the point at 11 years old, my first suicide attempt. I was actually home at that point. My mom let me stay home sick that time by myself. My neighbor was down the block if I needed her. And it was an early afternoon, right before my brother was getting home from school. I took a survival knife, and I started poking at my stomach, right? I was just so depressed. Don't know if I would have went through with it, right? But, maybe it's lucky for me, maybe it's not. But my brother came home, saw me with it, obviously called my mom right away. She came home from work. My mom was remarried at the time. Both my parents got remarried about a year and a half after getting divorced, a month apart, believe it or not. And the next day, my mom and my stepdad just took me to Stony Brook University Hospital to a psychiatrist, and they put me as inpatient. And I was in Stony Brook University Hospital for 2.5 months at that point. And that was really the beginning of, my journey with depression. I was developmentally delayed from day one, right?
Okay.
I had speech therapy at a young age. I had, I went to preschool for 2 years before I moved on to kindergarten, where I was mainstream finally. But, that 2.5 months, when I told you on our call, I was that guy the first night where I was in a straitjacket in that padded room, screaming my brains out, going nuts, right? You see that in movies and stuff like that, right?
And this is at 11.
I was that kid at 11 years old. Yeah, believe it or not,
My
at 11
God.
years old. But you know what? That was good for me because I got it all out, Darren. I got it all out that night. And the next 2.5 months, I really put my head down at 11 years old, and I said, I got to get out of here. And mind you, that was during Christmas time, right? That was in December. So basically from December, and I got out March 3rd. I remember, I'll never forget it. But I had to leave the hospital at 8 a.m. on Christmas Day, go home, and leave my family at 8 p.m. because you're only allowed to leave for 12 hours. So that was my Christmas that year. My whole family was there having a good time, and I had to leave them to go back to the hospital. So that's just what I went through, right? It was miserable, but it was the best time of my life because my mom made that decision. I give her credit all the time for making that tough decision. Because was it easy after that? No. I still came home. I went to school for a little bit. I started cutting again. There was a time where I went to school. I got off the bus and I ran, into the woods, and they had to come find me. I kicked open a school bus window. I was just that kid that just didn't matter. I wanted to stay home. I didn't want to go to school. And that went on, and then my mom got divorced a second time. We moved back to Staten Island with my grandparents, and I hated it. You're going from a small community in Long Island to the big city, right, basically. And I just hated it. I didn't like the noise. I didn't like the people. So I actually went back to my friend's house that first summer. The neighbor that I told you about, that was like a second mother to me. Now she had 2 kids, best friends. And she said, listen, come and stay for the summer. So I came, I stayed for the summer. I got to see all my friends. I downed a bunch of pills, tried to kill myself for the second time, just because I was depressed, because now
at your friend's house?
At the house. Yeah. So my mom had to come and get me. I was in therapy all along, mind you, so I was talking to people. I was still depressed. I was just in that mindset where that no from my father just sent me on that downward spiral,
Sure.
And this is at 12 years old. This happened a second time.
Man.
But then I started adapting in Staten Island. I met some good friends on the block, and they're still my friends almost 30 years later, right? They're like brothers, and I went to school. I remember going to school, a special school for 6th grade, and then I graduated there, and I went to intermediate school, 7th and 8th grade, for the first time in 2 years on a real level, right? It wasn't a special ed level. And I made it through 7th and 8th grade, and I graduated. And then I went to high school, and my first year, I was failing. I wasn't happy. I failed gym, Darren, right? Because I had that depressed mindset where the teacher told me to get dressed, and I refused to get dressed.
I got
Even
you.
though I was there every day, she failed me. They failed me, right? So they wanted me to go to summer school for gym. I'm like, I'm not going to summer school for gym. Are you crazy? I'm not going to sweat out there and run outside. I'm going to hang out with my friends. So my mom told me at 16, you could drop out, but you're going to work and you're going to get your GED, which was the legal age that you could sign yourself out. She wouldn't take me out of school, but she said, when you turn of age, if you promise me you get your GED and you're going to work every day, because I had a job since I was 14, at the pizzeria.
Yep.
I worked while I was in school, but then once I left, 16 years old, I got my GED 4 months later, and I've been working ever since, So I kept up my part of the bargain, but I was partying. I was drinking with my friends. I was going out. We were doing the ecstasy. We were going to the clubs. We were partying up in New York City, right? All while I was on medication for depression, mind you, right?
Oh,
So
my
one
gosh.
story I really want to tell is my best friend's 16th birthday. We're out and we called them the Flats. It was behind Staten Island University Hospital. It was just a bunch of woods, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we would go back there and drink, right, as teenagers, right? We would go to the store, finagle the beer and the drinks, right? And we go back there and drink. My best friend's 16th birthday, I drank a 40 of Old English, right? A couple OE, right?
Yeah.
Half a bottle of vodka straight I downed while I was on Zoloft. Okay? I blacked out completely in those woods, and my best friend on his 16th birthday had to drag me. Now, we were right next to the hospital, but they didn't want to take me to the hospital, right? They're 16-year-old kids. They don't want to, Now, some people say I tried to commit suicide. I didn't. I drank too much, and I was on medication, right?
Yeah.
I literally should have. There was no way I should be here today after that. Think about it.
Doesn't sound like it, yeah.
No, so they brought me to my house and knocked on my door, and we're going to try to leave me there. Funny story in between it, And my mom caught them and said, "What are you doing? Come in the house, And they brought me I woke up in the hospital. I had sand in my ears, in my teeth, in my head, bruises all over. They dragged basically a dead body about 7 blocks to my house. Literally saved my life. They could have left me there, right? But obviously These are my best friends. They're not going to leave me there. I don't even know how they weren't drunk enough to even, not think to try to save me. So I thank them all the time for that. But and that just, ever since then, I have not I can't drink vodka. I can't even have vodka sauce. Okay. Sure. I drink light beer occasionally. But, fast forward, my last suicide attempt, I was 23 years old, broke up with my girlfriend, had a bad breakup, and I downed a bunch of, I was taking sleeping pills at the time, and I downed a bunch of them. And, luckily, I didn't die. Obviously, I'm still here. And that was my third attempt. And that same year, I actually me and my friend took some bad ecstasy and literally could not move off our couch for hours.
Oh, my gosh.
And I thought we would die. We were literally calling our friends, calling people, not our family, because we didn't want them to know what we were doing. But we called our best friends and basically told them how much we loved them, and we thought we were dead. And ever since then, I have not touched a drug.
Amen.
We had some great times, but at the same time, I haven't touched anything. I don't do anything as far as that's concerned. And at 15, as you said, addiction set in. I created a gambling addiction, working at a place that had a pool that I helped run, the pick'em pools.
Yeah.
Basically, my first bet was the football tickets. I put $1 down. I picked 8 picks, and I hit it.
Oh, whoops.
That doesn't happen, okay? Anybody that does those tickets knows you can't go 8 for 8, all right?
Yeah.
It happened. Now, when you're an addict, a gambling addict, you're always going to win your first bet because that's what's going to get you addicted, right?
Sure.
Like, oh, wait a minute. I won $100 on that, right? And that just set me like, wow, this is awesome. I love sports, obviously. I was around it all the time, being there, working there, and running the pool. So it just starting at a young age, gambling, it just progressively got worse, right? Sports gambling. And it got to the point where 6 years ago when I stopped, I was betting 60, 70, 80 games on a Saturday, a college football Saturday.
Holy mackerel.
You can't win that way, I didn't care about my family. I didn't care about myself. I didn't care about anybody but that bet. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't even care if I won the bet. I just needed to get, that bet in. And then it didn't matter what happened over the next 3 hours. I don't care if I won or lost. As long as I had that bet in, I was high.
Yeah. Okay.
I felt great. And it just consumed my life. I don't know how I kept my jobs. I worked at AT&T when I was 20 years old. I worked in telecommunications for 20 years. I always had a job. I always worked 2 jobs. I always had that work ethic, but gambling consumed my life. I did not care. I would study gambling from the minute I woke up to the minute I went to sleep, whether I was at work or not. It was my life. And,
Wow.
it was just, it was miserable. And it was all something I kind of created because of my depression. It was my escape. That was my biggest trigger, was my escape from life.
Now, did your wife know that you were gambling as much as you were, or?
She didn't know I was gambling as much as I was, but there was instances. Listen, when you're a gambler, you borrow money from people. I borrow money from my best friends. I borrow money from my father. I had those phone calls with my mother. Listen, I won't do it again, right? I won't do it again. Just bail me out. I won't do it again.
Yeah.
I was blessed to have bookies that were good friends of mine. One of my bookies, God rest his soul, he passed away a couple of years ago, was one of my managers at AT&T. Right.
Wow.
So, and his best friend was the guy. So, when I owed a lot of money, I would pay it off. I would be a runner too. I would have people betting under me, and then I'd collect 10% on their losses. So there was a 2-year period where I didn't even have to pay money out of my pocket. He just took my 10% to pay off my gambling debt. You don't see that very often, right?
Yeah.
I never had anybody banging down my door.
Thank God.
I never had that. I did have conversations that were kind of going that way. But I got bailed out. But yeah, I mean, my wife knew that I gambled and she knew these situations happened. But the last time I gambled, she had no idea I was doing it for those 3 months.
What was the most you were in debt?
The
if
most
you're comfortable
I ever was
saying.
in debt was $15,000. It wasn't a lot.
Ooh, yeah, well.
I mean, for me, it was. Listen, no amount is big or small. It's just an amount.
Yeah.
Right. I know people hundreds and 7 figures. But
what's the most you won?
The most I ever won, in a week?
Yeah.
Most I ever won in a week was about $6,000.
Okay.
But it was gone next week.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what happens. When you're a gambling addict, and I know so many people that gamble, and it's okay. For me personally, I can do anything in this world. I just know I can't gamble.
Sure.
Right? Because I get to the point where if I win too much, I'm on a high, and I'm like, all right, it's not enough. That $6,000 wasn't enough. That was the most I ever won, but it wasn't enough for me. I had to go back the following week and say, I got to win more.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't I bet more on this game? Right? I would have won more. That's the mindset I had. Instead of being happy that I won $6,000, and then if I lost, I had to chase. Right? That's what you do as a gambling addict. You chase. You're constantly chasing. So, for me, having that conversation with my wife 6 years ago, was the toughest thing I had to do. And I went to rehab. So I made the decision finally. Both my children, I only had one at the time, my daughter 2 years old, we spoke about it. They have a very rare medical condition. And, the thing that set me off, that really turned it all around for me, and it didn't happen until about a month later, but Thanksgiving of 2013,
okay.
We were up at my in-laws' house for Thanksgiving that weekend, upstate New York. And my daughter, my kids have I have an 8-month-old now as well that also has a disease. It's called LCHAD, where basically they can't break down fat, and it affects every single organ in their body. It's a life-threatening disease. It's very rare. There's no cure. It's just, we just lost a 15-year-old, actually a week and a half ago in Brooklyn, to the disease. She lost her life. So it was really sad. My wife went to the wake.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, thank you. It's when they hit puberty as women, it's all downhill from there because their hormones are going crazy and it affects all their organs, their muscle tone, everything. So my daughter from age 1 to 2, had a couple of hospital stays because basically when they get sick, their sugars drop. If they have low sugars, we got to take them right to the hospital.
Okay.
So that Thanksgiving, my daughter got so white and was projectile vomiting everywhere. And, Thanksgiving is football, right?
Yeah.
It's football.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting up there my daughter's sick, getting really sick. They're getting ready to take her to Albany Hospital, which was the closest hospital. And I'm pretending I'm sick because I don't want to go. I'm literally pretending. My daughter could be dying, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, I got to watch the games, you know? So my sister-in-law went with my wife. And I'll never forget that, right? But, I mean, I went the next day, you know, and my sister-in-law came home, and then we took my daughter home a couple of days later. But I still gambled for a month, Darren. I still gambled for a month, even going through that. And it got to the point where I was down about 11 grand. And the pit in my stomach that I felt, I'm like, I can't do this anymore. You know, this isn't just me anymore. This is my wife. This is my daughter. My wife needs me to be there for my daughter. My daughter needs me to be a father. You know, I was always there physically, but mentally, I was not there for them. And I made the decision. I reached out to some people. I went online. I found some rehabs because I knew about Gamblers Anonymous meetings. I knew about it. I had friends that were in AA and NA. I knew about the program. I just wasn't ready, right? But at that time, I was ready. But I needed to escape what was going on at home if I was going to truly get right. I had to give everything up, my job. And at that time, I was actually on leave because I had started a new medication a month before, where Abilify, where I knew it was going to mess with my head. So I took a leave from my job. So I was away. I was home. So I had the opportunity for a couple of months to really go away and get help because I was already off of work. So I found a place down in Florida. I had the conversation with my wife, and she said, okay, go ahead and do it. So I left on December 30th of 2019. I came back the end of January. I was there for 30 days. Absolute best decision I ever made. I told you that the first night I was there, I got a call the next day from my wife crying her brains out. My daughter had 2 seizures on New Year's Eve. My therapist said, listen, if you want to go home, I'll send you home tomorrow. And I had to sleep on it. And I basically said, I'm no good to my family, and I will not come back here if I go home. Between my family and my wife's family, I had enough support to help her through that. And I stayed. And it was the absolute best decision I ever made because I was able to get well. I'm still clean 6+ years later.
Amen.
I'm very involved with GA. I'm very involved. I started a room Saturday mornings. I sponsor people. I've spoken at rehabs. And I've kind of dedicated my life to really bettering myself so that I could help people out there that have gone through what I've gone through, and just be there for my family. And that's what I'm blessed to be right now. Be there for my family. Be a husband. Be a father. Be a son. Right. I made amends. I make amends every day with my friends and my family. I just doing the right thing. I don't need to apologize. I just need to do the right thing. And am I perfect? No, absolutely not. We're human beings, right?
Right.
We're gonna misstep, but just acknowledging it and understanding that I have to put my ego in my back pocket and I don't know everything and I got to ask for help has done wonders for me. So, you know, that's my story in a nutshell. I know I went a little on there, but
no. Man, that was awesome.
You know,
thank you for sharing that. I mean, most people tackle one addiction or one traumatic thing like that. You took on both, and you came out on the other side, and you know, now you're kind of transitioning into the next part of the story. You're out helping other people, and you're better for it personally. And I always say it's therapeutic to tell your story, but it's inspiring for others to hear it because they know they're not alone and they're going through something that somebody else has gone through. So let's talk about kind of the foundation and what you're working with.
Yeah, sure. So, you know, basically, one of my good friends has started a foundation to get suicide awareness out there called Katie's Mission. And anybody could go to katiesmission.com and check it out. So basically, she lost her sister at 23 years old. And then 5 years later, her mother, both to suicide.
Oh, my.
And her sister was a vet in the Navy, I believe. And, you know, so she struggled, and she was at the point where when her sister and her mother passed, she didn't know how she was going to pay for it. Right. Because that stuff, that's not a sickness that that you're set up for, that you know, it's not cancer or anything like that. Right.
And insurance doesn't cover it.
No, it doesn't. So it's always been her dream to really start this to where she could help families really pay for their funerals, or at least help somewhat. Right. Sure. So she started Katie's Mission to basically, and she hopes people never need her services. Right. And that's why we're trying to put we'll put things out there and get awareness out there for signs and tips and stuff like that to deal with suicide and depression and mental health. So I've come on as the head ambassador to really help her, tell my story, and also, help get the word out there so she could raise money and basically, help these families, that have to unfortunately go through that. So I'm very involved with that. And I'm just involved with helping people in any way they possibly, like you said, it's inspiring for people to hear my story and other story who go through these things, right? Because people are scared to really put it out there, and for me personally, if I'm not being vulnerable, if I'm not uncomfortable, if I'm not here with you telling this story, if one person hears this and says, you know what, I can get help. I could stop gambling. I could stop drinking. I have a special needs kid, and, I could handle it, for me, that's what it means. That's what it's all about, So, I really applaud you for having people on that can tell these kind of stories and really get the word out there, So, that's what I'm all about. I believe if you provide value and you put good into this world, you're going to get it back tenfold. Right?
100%.
And I'm a real big proponent in doing that. And that's what I believe I'm doing here today, is providing value, hopefully, for people. And, I know good things are going to happen for me and for other people that are going through the same things I'm going through.
Well, you don't know who's listening, right? We don't know who's reaching. We are worldwide, potentially, because it's the internet. And you never know who needs to hear this, because everybody, they say, especially vets, it's called suffering in silence, right? They just don't, it's not, now suicide is something that is becoming more mainstream to talk about. And, hopefully we're cutting down the 22 a day in the military, but it's a tough world out there. And I think the coping skills, when we were growing up, we had more coping skills than than the kids today growing up that are just living in the internet and not socializing.
Mm-hmm.
They don't socialize.
Nope.
And they got their head down playing games or whatever. So it's more important than ever for people to hear these stories. And like you said, you're going out and teaching people signs to look for and ways to identify people that are at risk, right? And then you're telling your story, which is reaching out to people. And Joe, I can't thank you enough for doing that. And thank you so much for reaching out to me and coming on the show, because that's a big step. I mean, you're talking about some tough topics to discuss, and it takes a lot of intestinal fortitude and courage to just do that. And, I mean, it's very inspiring, and I can't thank you enough. I mean, Joe, this has been I teared up a little bit in hearing your story the first time and the second time, and I'm sure that means that you're reaching people, and it's important for people to hear this, and to then maybe, if you do have a suicide issue, or you're contemplating, please reach out, talk to somebody, call anybody and reach out. You are important, people. We all want you to live. And Joe, your message is just that, right? I mean, you want people to live. You want people to get through that, go to the next second, go to the next moment, and then fight on from there, right? So
absolutely. And if I could give one piece of advice to people, and one thing is, first of all, you're all awesome human beings. Like you just said, we want you to be here. And for me personally, it's all about, we all have a decision every single day when we wake up. Can we let those bad moments, those bad things that happen in our head or in our lives ruin our day or ruin our month? Or can we just take a step back, take a deep breath and say, you know what? I'm blessed for today. I'm grateful for today. Let me make it a great day, right? And that is what I live by. My attitude of gratitude is everything to me. That has changed my life, and I'm grateful for all the small things I have in my life, whereas I took all that for granted back in the day, right? And, we can't take any minute for granted, because we don't know what we have, if we have tomorrow. So, guys, just, you know what? One piece of advice is just live your life. And I'm blessed to do that today. I'm blessed to be here with you, Darren, and I really appreciate, you having me on. I'm glad I'm glad Jose sent me a copy of the first episode, and I was able to reach out to you, because that's what it's all about. It's all about helping each other, and I want everybody to succeed. I want everybody to be happy and everybody to live their life. So I'm always here for anybody that wants to reach out to me. I never turn anybody away, and I appreciate you having me on today.
Hey, thanks so much. And I thank you for sharing your "But Did You Die" story. I mean, that's a really "But Did You Die" story. And no, you didn't. And you've gone on to do great things. And I want to just everybody, please pray for your children
Thank you.
and for you. That's a tough one, and we're thinking about you. When I heard about this first, we did our pre-interview,
Mhm.
that's been on my mind constantly. I've been telling my wife and people I know. I'm like, have you ever heard of it? And nobody has, and it's something
Yeah.
that is it's you just gotta dig deep and know that people were praying for you and we're with you. Um, and I know things are gonna come out.
Thanks, Darren. I
Right.
appreciate that. Thank you. It means a lot.
You bet. Well, Joe, thanks for coming on. We'll kind of, this is a good place to end it. And I'd love to have you on to give us updates. So in the future.
Absolutely. Anytime. I look forward to reaching out.
You bet. Thank you.